Okay, good evening, everyone. It's 6:35, so we're going to start at this time. I am Miss Alfred, a kindergarten teacher at the Five Islands Primary School. Now, I love teaching and I've been working with children for the past few years. I'm currently pursuing a bachelor's degree in early childhood education and family studies at the University of West Indies Open Campus. In order to satisfy one of the requirements for Practicum 4, a course that I'm currently doing, I'm hosting this parent teacher meeting in which our featured presenter, Ms. Warner, will speak to us on the topic coping with grief. This evening, we have with us our principal, Ms. Lydiette, and my fellow kindergarten teachers, Ms. Gore, Ms. Christian, and Ms. Mona Montalban. But just before I introduce our speaker for this evening, I have a little activity, a little icebreaker for you to participate in. Now, in light of the topic for this evening, I will call a word and you will have to find an emoji that suits that feeling and put it in the chat. So I'm going to start out with one that's really easy, happy. So let's see who can come up with the emoji that best suits that word. Just type it in the chat. Okay, I see some coming in. Yes. All right. Okay, let me give you the second word, upset. Upset. Okay. Sad. Right. Confused. Furious. Yes. Surprised. Okay, yes, yes. Those are all, yes, okay. Shocked. Right. Annoyed. I'm not seeing any for annoyed. Okay, yes. Yes, Miss Humphries, that's a good one there. I'm sure we use that a lot. What about heartbroken? Right. Afraid. Okay. And the last one, tired. All right. Thank you so much for participating in that little activity. Now, our presenter for this evening is Miss Harriet Warner. She is a guidance counselor and she provides student support services with the Ministry of Education. Now, tonight she's going to speak to us on the topic coping with grief. And without further ado, please welcome Miss Harriet Warner.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation, Teacher Alfred, and
Good evening.
my deepest condolence.
Who is that?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we're hearing you.
All right, thank you. So I wanted to say good evening to the parents, the children, those who are listening.
You're
And
listening.
I also hello, somebody, you have to take off your mic, mute your microphone. So I also wanted to express my deepest condolences to you, the parents, and to the children and staff um, during this time where you're mourning the loss of a teacher, a dedicated, hardworking teacher. And so I wanted to begin by expressing those condolences to you. And I really hope that you know, would find comfort in knowing that she worked hard, she did her best, and also she was dedicated to her task. And I hope you'd find comfort in God and you would continue to have hope and keep living. Now, tonight we want to talk about grief and coping with grief. And so it's an important topic. And we want to look at, I wanted to share with you in 3 parts, just to explain to you what the stages of grief is, to look at how children present with issues of grief and how we normally deal with it, and also to leave with you a few coping skills, both for the children and for the adults. All right, so one of the first things I wanted to explain is that it is okay to grieve. It is completely okay. Death itself is the end of life, but it's a part of life because life continues. And it has a lot of unanswered questions. And so sometimes we don't deal with it properly because culturally we're taught not to cry because we believe that we show strength by not crying. And so sometimes what the real battle is against, you know, everybody wants you to hold yourself up and to keep together, as opposed to processing what has happened. And from a counseling perspective, one of the things we encourage people is to process what has happened. You know, take your time with the grief, give yourself permission to grieve, which means if you feel like crying, let it out, cry. If you want to bawl, you know, some people may say nothing. Some people don't feel like crying. And some people it's delayed. And so you have different responses from different persons. Some people get busy and they deflect. So they put their energy in something else as opposed to really processing what happens. And sometimes it could hit you months after, years after, in terms of how difficult it was. But the grief process is that it has no major order. Shock, which is a part of the grief process. I don't like to call it the stages of grief because it seems to suggest that we move from one stage to the other. And while we move through the, I prefer to call it a cycle, because sometimes those cycles are repeated as we learn to move forward with grief. And so one of the first things sometimes we're in shock. And then we could be in denial as well, where we can't believe it happens. At any one of these stages, sometimes people can remain stuck in those stages. And some people may move through very quick. Some people may say, you know, it's sad, you know, I really can't believe. But it's just something that we have to deal with, you know. And so we move sometimes from shock to denial and to anger. Now, anger is big, and this is one of the feelings that we may have as we go through the grief cycle, because as human beings, we tend to look for, we want to place our anger on something. We want to place the grief on something. We want a cause so that it can tend to make us feel. We want a justifiable reason as to why. And there are some things that doesn't offer us that. There is no justifiable reason. It's not explainable. And so we have to accept it as it is. And so sometimes we stay in anger for a bit and we find ourselves easily agitated. They're at work, things, it's normally not a good time to really pass through, a good amount of that process, because sometimes we're not thinking straight. We're making a decision based on emotions that we haven't fully processed. And our emotions are very, very real. We don't always see them until sometimes they blow up in cases like anger. But we have to acknowledge, sometimes you're just in shock to the point where you can't cry, you can't do anything, you can't move forward, you just can't believe, and you stay there for a while and you talk about it and you wonder if, and you try to think in your head, what could I have done? And so sometimes this happens. So we move from shock to denial to anger, and then sorrow, where we may be crying a lot. And this is absolutely normal. We have a tendency to tell people, okay, and pat them on the back to tell them, hush now, that's enough crying. And so what people do is that they hide when they want to cry, or they cry at home because they need to come out and prove to the world that they're brave. There's nothing that we have to prove as we go through grief. We just have to go through the process and the stages, and eventually we reach to acceptance. So there are 5 main areas that we go through grief: shock, denial, anger, sorrow, and acceptance. Acceptance tends to be considered the final part of the cycle, where we accept, hey, the person has gone, we have to move on with our lives, etc. Now, while you may be a person that is at acceptance, another person may not be there. And so it's important for us to be sensitive or compassionate, empathetic to other persons as they go through. Because very often what happens when one person dies, sometimes people are grieving for other persons that have died before. And this is the time when they are now grieving those. So sometimes the burden is heavy, and people are really dealing with a lot of emotions, a lot of emotional baggage, things that we've set aside in our brain that we no longer can control, that just burst like a river. And we go through these stages. One of the things we've experienced when dealing with children, especially kindergarten age, they sometimes are able to cope and reach acceptance very quickly. You'll hear them say, oh, teacher didn't wake up. Yeah, teacher died, where we struggle to say the word that she died. We struggle to say those things because saying it is a form of acceptance. And so we struggle in saying these words. The other thing about children in that age group is that most of them lack the emotional regulation. Their brain development is not really there yet, where they can associate this deep sorrow, the whole idea of missing someone. We tend to be able to deal with this type of grief when they're a bit older, when they start to hit the preteen stages, 9, 10, when they understand and they remember the teacher. And so one of the things that is important to do is to keep the memory alive. Don't dismiss her like, if, well, she was here, she gone, so let's move on. Move on doesn't mean that you move on without the memory. Move on simply means that you keep living and you keep processing. And so there are lots of things that we were able to do. One, we keep talking about Teacher Davis. Parents can talk about Teacher Davis with their children as they bring up the topic, because children take their cues from adults. If the adults are crying a lot, the children start to cry a lot. If the adults are angry, and so whatever emotions you're dealing with, they tend to take your cues and they would model your behavior as they do with other behaviors at that particular age group. And so Um, you know, don't be afraid to explain to the child exactly what has happened. Allow them to go through their process if they're there. Not all children are there. And I believe we're dealing with various age groups. In kindergarten, you could be dealing with what, 5 to 7. And so you also dealing with some children who are more mature, have had certain experiences before, and may understand a bit more than other children. But it's important to keep talking or to create memory worksheets, worksheets that could have on, what's the best memory remember of Teacher Davis? Um, what's the fun thing she ever did in class? What's the happiest moment you ever had with her? What's the saddest moment? So you're helping them to understand, hey, there are different emotions, different feelings, and they're identifying those emotions. And then you can talk with them and have questions and explain certain things. So the parents may have more time at home and be in a better position. You may be just sitting outside on your porch and you say, teach. And that's when the child would say, Teacher Davis always tell us this. And this is how you're supposed to count. And you may pick up some stones and whatever. So the methodology and the things that we can do are vast and numerous. But the whole idea behind using any kind of method is to keep the memory alive. Or the child may start to cry and you can't tell them hush, however, allow them to express their emotions if they're at that place. But generally, we don't have that happening at that age. It's a bit like 2-3 years from now. Some of them will be dealing with this and really understanding what they're going through and understanding that she died and it's a loss. And that would most likely happen when they may experience a death in their own family of someone close to them. They'll be able to make the association between, what they experienced with Teacher Davis and what they're experiencing now. But it's a time when you want to be sensitive, a time when you want to be compassionate, to different things. And it's also a reflective time because that teaches us a lot. It teaches us a lot of things about life itself, kind of teach us. And while as adults, we are definitely in active grief going through the process, trying to, many of us ask different questions. Why Teacher Davis? Why she had to go like that? Was she in pain? The different things that's going through her mind. And if we lost someone as adults similar to her recently, it makes the pain a little bit more difficult, or it makes the understanding a bit easier. So those are some of the things that I wanted to share in terms of what the grief process is and how you deal with the children. The children tend to be more resilient than us because they haven't fully begun to cope with it yet. And so those are some of the things I want you to remember. Now, as adults, there are a lot of other things that you can do in terms of grieving. Definitely talking about it, creating memorabilia. You may have pictures, or you may remember events and things that you would have experienced with her. You can also have those pictures created to fun books. So the child has that fun book to keep, but you can do the activity with the child because it's also going to help you to cope. The other thing that adults could do, apart from talking about it, is to be able to give. She had children. Most of the times during grief, people don't eat. It would be nice to take a meal. If you're not a meal, you don't know what you eat, a food basket, something that says we're here, we care, and you're not alone. And sometimes we have to do that with each other because I can imagine one or two of the parents would have been close to Teacher Davis. And I know Teacher Davis and the bubbly personality that she is, and she is contagious. So she latches on her personality and everyone. And so some of the other questions that you want to ask a bit later on, not now, is what would Teacher Davis have wanted you to do? What would have been her wish? What would she have wanted her to do? Because you would want to honor the person's fine wish that they would have had in these moments of their lives. And that is also something that you can take forward. Grief goes with us, and we learn to cope with it better with time. And so as we go forward, those are some of the thoughts, you want to ask yourself, what would she have wanted? She want me to stop living and don't achieve my goals? What kind of person was she? Would she really want me to do that? And those are some of the things you can ask yourself. But adults, just be mindful that you're not, being ticked off with another person or the children irritating you while you trying to grapple with this thing. And for those of you who may be listening who have recently lost someone, don't shut down the process. Cry if you have to. Find somebody to talk to about it. Say how you're really feeling about the fact that it hurt you, and express yourself and express those feelings. Bottled up feelings can be dangerous if they're not expressed. You may be able have to bottle up your feelings when you're at work, but when you go home, find some time, do some reflection, write in your journal, say how you really feel, because that itself is important. Do positive things, plant a tree, go in your garden and clean it up, and so on. And do things that would uplift you, not pull you down. Because the we can choose to do some other things like drinking and excessive drinking and smoking because we're trying to null the emotional pain. And that in itself creates another problem because then you find yourself, you can't stop drink, you can't stop smoke, and then you end up in this rut of something that you're trying to now get out of as a result of not wanting to deal with the grief. So it is very, very important for us to be able to do that, to deal with the grief in a healthy manner, to say that she has died, she passed away, and all the fancy term, go straight to it. She has died, she went to sleep, she didn't wake up, you know. And we want to be able to use those terms with the children and have real discussions with them. This is the time that they may understand what death is for the first time. It may be the closest person to them that would have died. So they themselves have a lot of questions, and I want to encourage you to answer their questions. Don't tell them about she fly gone somewhere and all this kind of stuff. Be real with the children. And then some of them will tell you, what they think happened because they may associate her to a pet they had and the pet died and different things like that. So it's really vast, the different things that we can do to cope. But it is important for us to be self-aware. Be aware of your own self, what you're going through, your own triggers. For those persons who may suffer with high blood pressure or some other kind of illness they're dealing with, be sensitive to deal with yourself well. Make sure your pressure is not too high. Make sure you check your pressure, take your medication, because that can lead to something. As grief is something that can actually take you out if you don't deal with it properly. So it's very important for you to be able to do these different things because sometimes we keep so much things bottled up. We're like, when you try to cap a bottle of soda, it blows up. And we don't want to have any of those things happening. And I doubt whether Teacher Davis would want some of those things for you as parents and for the children that she taught. I believe she would have wanted the best for them going forward. She was involved in educating the next generation and being the first start, those who teach them to blend and to read and things like that. And those are important markers because a lot of children don't forget their first teachers. So those are very, very important. All right, Teacher Alfred, any other area, if you have any comments or you want to ask any questions about how you may be feeling, things you may be going through, you're free to do that as well. But I'll give you back over to Teacher Alfred because she would sort of be in control of that segment. All right. Teacher Alfred.
Yes, thank you so much for that. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for that information.
Okay.
At this time, the
You're
floor
most
is
welcome.
open for parents or any other person that would like to make a comment, ask a question, or even just offer their thanks to the presenter for this presentation. If you do have a question, feel free to type it in the box, chat box, if you prefer, rather than opening your mic. That's okay. Okay, I see a parent has their
Jaden.
Hi,
presentation.
Jaden.
Who took Teacher Davis?
Hello.
Again,
Who tell Teacher Davis?
I'm not hearing Jaden clearly. He's saying who. I don't hear after who what.
Who killed Teacher Davis?
Oh, you're asking who killed Teacher Davis. Well, Teacher Davis died in her sleep. We're not able to answer that question for you, as that is as much as we know.
Who?
Okay. Okay, Jaden.
Yes.
Okay. We're not sure what happened, but we know that she didn't wake up.
Hmm?
Okay.
I'm Harrison.
Good night. I have a question.
Yes.
Yes. For instance, my daughter, she wasn't feeling well the other day, and in the midst of not feeling well, she got up out of the blue and she was like, Mommy, how they lie? Teacher Davis is not dead. So I was like, not knowing what, how, just froze.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I asked what happened. And she was like, she saw Teacher Davis come in the car with some people. She can't remember the people. She can't remember the rest of the dream. And I didn't know what to tell her. So in that position, what should I say to her at that point? Because she's still lamenting about Teacher Davis and she missed Teacher Davis and she's sad ever so.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I don't
Let
know.
her. Hi, Kima. I see your name here. Let her express herself. Because she probably had a dream about Teacher Davis and she is missing her. You can ask a question. That's an opportunity to begin to ask her, so what you miss about Teacher Davis and what you and Teacher Davis used to do together. And then you can continue the conversation, see, and ask her, say she's gonna miss Teacher Davis, and you tell her yes, but these things happen in life, because you see, we can't protect the children from a reality. That is a very false notion and not a good thing to do. So you let her know, yes, we don't have Teacher Davis with us anymore. But Teacher Davis left a lot of things. She taught you a lot of things. What are some of the things Teacher Davis taught you? And get her talking about Teacher Davis, because that's going to help her to express how she feels and express herself. And she may cry, and allow her to cry. Give her the time and space and let her know that you're here for her and that you understand. But don't stop her from crying. Don't let her feel bad about crying. Don't let her feel bad about her expression, not even about her dream, because she is having an experience that she needs to share. And so that's important for you to be able to listen to.
Okay, with that being said, let her cry, let her cry. I had a real close connection with Teacher Davis, apart from
Mhm.
school. And I am this type that get very emotional very quickly. And I
Mhm.
don't want to see Nakoya to see me breaking. I don't
Yeah,
want
she
to
needs to see you breaking so she can know that it's real. That's okay if she sees you breaking. Remember, I said earlier, in our culture, that's one of the things that we do that's not very healthy. we tend to want to minimize the grief, or, I don't want to talk about it because it's so sensitive. And if I mention teacher Davis' death, oh, they're going to cry. Let them cry. It's okay. Let them get it out. It's their emotion. The more we bottle it up, they may start to hit each other and fight in the classroom. So let them express themselves. If she's, and that's probably one of the reasons, Kima, why she's so expressive, because you yourself are expressive, and that's good. It's healthy. There's nothing at all wrong with that.
Okay, thank you.
You're most welcome. I see there's a question in the chat. I'm not too sure if anybody can answer it, but I can't because I don't know when is the funeral.
Yes. To answer the question in the chat, we don't have that information as yet. Of course, you would have to get that from the family and so on. So when we do get that information, of course, we will share it with parents and those who are interested. Okay. Are there any other questions, comments for the presenter at this time? Okay, go right ahead.
Hi, good evening. This is teacher Christian, a fellow kindergarten teacher. I apologize. I am not well, but I had a question with regards to helping the children. Um, they would have known how she passed, and some would not understand. And so we have, well, I'm speaking for myself. I have children come to me tired, and I would ask, what's wrong? What happened? Teacher, I was afraid to go to sleep because I didn't want to not wake up like Teacher David. And it's
Mhm.
very, very heartbreaking when, I myself haven't really come to grips with it as yet. So, um,
Mhm.
how do you explain that, it's not going to happen when in truth you don't know? Because something as simple as being fearful of sleep and not being able to wake up, even for yourself, how do you explain to them that, I don't have any control over it? But that's not a reason, it's hard for me to explain. So how would you go about explaining that?
All right, thank you so much, teacher Christian. Good question. The best thing to be is to be truthful. There are two things you don't want to do. One, you don't want to tell them something that maybe the talk on the streets that you're not sure about. Um, and two, neither do you want to tell them these Nancy Drew stories that when she went, the dove came and picked her up and all kind of things. She went to sleep and she didn't wake up. That is what happened. That is much as what we knew. I would not give the children any extra information. One of the things about giving information, a person has to be able to deal with it. So we can also overburden the children with excessive information that they don't know what to do with. Now, that child is a normal response, but if she didn't wake up, the child is rationalizing and analyzing that, okay, then if I go to sleep, I may not wake up too. But you say, well, I don't have any answers to that. I don't know. It's okay to tell children that you don't know. And if you are a Christian person or a spiritual person, you can let them know, well, who wakes us up every day? God does. And that you have no control over. And it is okay to say that and be honest, because except you're going to tell them that once they do this and this formula, then they will wake up, then you're creating another bag of questions that you really can't answer. But share the information as far as you have it, and don't overburden them with extra information. I know it is difficult for the teachers because the teachers are still grappling with it. And then you still have to go every day to little people who will ask you these same questions, but actually talking about it helps. So one of the things I would encourage the kindergarten to do is to get some worksheets. You can use different colored paper and punch them, tie a ribbon in them, and one page has on the fun times we had with Teacher Davis. The next page had on what she taught me, what I remember about her. The next page has on a picture they're going to draw about her. But what that does is encourages them to express their emotions and to keep her memory alive in a positive way. And so when they come with some of those questions, that activity may answer some of those questions for them. But I really want to caution the parents as well. If you may have added information, you may live in the community, you may have lived close to her, or I know she's from Grayson, so people would know her. But you can't give the children every piece of information you hear, and you cannot discuss all what is happening around them because they get overburdened and then they get frightened. And then the next thing we have is that they're having nightmares. They can't sleep, they jump up, Mommy, can I sleep with you? That may happen for a while where, you know, they want some extra comfort because they don't understand. And we give them that. But Teacher Christine, it is so important to just let them know exactly as much as you know. But every time they come and ask, I know it's difficult. It's a difficult time. But if you guys can engage in some of those activities to help them to remember her, not talking about her hurts because she was here. She was just here. How could we not talk about Teacher Davis? You know, Teacher Davis was this to me and that to me, you know, and so you can get some nice printable worksheets, or I could see what I can find and forward to Teacher Alfred. So as the whole kindergarten can have a time where they're going through some of the worksheets or create memorabilia. It's also memorabilia for them. You know, even if you guys put her picture up on the wall, or a staff fun time that you had where you have a picture of her, you can print it out and have it, you know, so they remember her.
Okay, thank you.
You're most welcome.
Okay, thank you once again. Are there
But
any
remember,
more questions?
I just wanted to close by saying, you know, when the children start to cry, they come to the desk, just allow them to cry and encourage them to support each other, because this is something we want to teach and them going forward, and even in our society, that we also have learned to support each other. Today I'm sad and I need an encouragement. And a lot of times during grief, we don't say anything. You just stand with the person, be present, allow the person to express. Sometimes people just want to cry, they just want you there, and that's it. You know, there's not a whole lot of words we have to look for to provide the necessary comfort. So as staff members, if you need to pause and cry, do that. If you need to call for backup help, do that. If you need to, I need to leave the staff room, teacher cover for me, I'm coming back. And you guys be able to take turns, even for your teacher Christian, where it becomes challenging, where it becomes too much emotion to deal with at that particular time, then it is important for you to be able to take a pause, take the exit to deal with the emotion. All right, thank you guys so much. It was a privilege to share with you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you again for that very enlightening presentation, Ms. Warner. I can honestly say I've been able to take a few gems with me. I'm sure others would be able to say the same. I know each person might have had different levels of interaction with Teacher Davis, but we all will come to experience grief or the loss or death of someone in our lifetime, or even changes, because sometimes change is so significant that it causes us to grieve too. So yes, right. I thank you. I thank you again for presenting on this topic to us. It has really helped me to be able to compartmentalize feelings and thoughts, so that as teachers, parents, educators, because we're all educators, and we can really be present for the children so that we can give them the best So once again, thank you so much for presenting this evening.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. Have a good night, everyone.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you,
Good night.
parents. Do enjoy the rest of
Good
your
night. Good night.
evening.
You too, Miss Alfred. Good night.
Okay.